my name is Paige. Welcome to my channel. Sorry that this video wasn't up on Saturday like usual. It was just a really busy weekend. I had a wedding to go to. A dear friend of mine got married, so happy for her. Congratulations, Mallory! But anyway, I am back today to do something a little bit different. I was inspired by actually a couple booktubers who have done this sort of video, and I've been thinking about doing it for a while and finally decided that it's time. So this video will be me talking about popular books that I don't like. So that of course brings me to this viewer warning, which of course is that if one of these books on this list is one of your favorite books, or even just a book that you liked and you don't agree with me, then that's perfectly fine. It's completely subjective, so I'm definitely not judging you or anything for liking these books. They're just popular books that I specifically just didn't like. So I wanted to start with the ones that I'm less controversial for not liking and get into the ones that a lot of people really love, and maybe I'm just a weirdo because I don't like them. So stay tuned to the end of the video to see what those books are, and I'm sorry in advance. Today I'm only going to list 3 books that I don't like. However, I could probably do a little bit of a series on this, including a video about popular books that I do like, or popularly hated books that I like, because there are a lot of those. But anyway, today will be only 3 books, except they are all in series, so it will take a little bit of time to cover all of them. So first up we have the Vampire Academy series by Richelle Mead. I'm already aware that a lot of people don't like this series at all, or they don't like this series but they like the other series that she did, Bloodlines, because it follows, to be honest, the most interesting character in the entire Vampire Academy series. So I haven't read that series. I might genuinely like it. However, I have read all of the Vampire Academy books. So I started Vampire Academy in 2017. I had never read them as like a teenager or like a preteen, which I think is typically when people read them. They probably read them around the time that Twilight was in and Vampire Diaries and all that stuff, but I never got to read the series. So in 2017 I decided that I wanted to go back to that time and kind of experience this series because it was really big for a lot of people. But anyway, I read all of the books. I was supposed to be buddy reading this series with my friend Becky, and Becky fell off reading this series, but I continued on. Now you might be asking yourself, Paige, if this series is on your list of popular books you didn't like, then why did you read the entire series? Because yes, there are 6 books in this series. Well, I will tell you why. So in 2017, I was in a really big reading craze. I could read a lot of books in no amount of time. I think it's because I had not been reading for a while, and then when I finally came back to it, I was like obsessed with reading everything, anything. So finishing the series didn't really take me that long because the books aren't that big. Regardless of that, I'm not sure how I made it through. This series follows the main character Rose Hathaway, who is a vampire, and basically that means that she's half vampire, half human, which automatically makes her like a guardian or protector of the full, true-blooded vampires, which in her case, the person that she's protecting is her best friend Lissa, who is a Moroi vampire. And Lissa has fantastic and dangerous powers that make her the target of a lot of villains in her own kind and these evil vampires called Strigoi. So essentially Vampire Academy is about Lissa and Rose protecting Lissa and Lissa being hunted and just that kind of stuff. Off the bat, I can tell you that the protagonist of these books is one of my least favorite protagonists I've ever read in a book series ever. Rose is just completely not my cup of tea. But I think that's kind of sad because I usually like the overconfident protagonist, even though we don't really get a lot of those female protagonists, so it's sad that I don't like Rose as much as I should probably. But the reality is that regardless of whether she's confident or not, she hurts a lot of people just being kind of stubborn and just obnoxious. I also just kind of felt thrown off by the feeling of reading a book series from the perspective of a side character, if that makes sense. Like, Lissa is the main character, it feels like, and Rose is like the side, like the best friend side character, except this is like a series in her perspective. And like that sounds like a good idea, like a good concept to write a series from, but in reality it just kind of felt weird because I felt like I was always a little bit out of the loop on what was really happening in the series. But with that being said, that wasn't really the main turnoff for me. It was just something that was a little bit weird for me. However, probably one of the main turnoffs in this whole series was just all the romance, because I was never convinced of any of it. I think it's really cool that Rose and Lissa are best friends and she's her protector, and I really like that dynamic of like a female best friendship where one of them is actually like the mother bear kind of, except I don't know if you want to call Rose a mother bear, I don't know. But I liked that dynamic a lot. But the relationships or the dating or just anything romantic in this series, it was just, if you liked it for 1 second, then it was gone. There was no longevity, which is fine, except there's like kind of a lot of emotional abuse, and it was just awful. But getting into the spoiler section of this explanation, throughout reading it, I was just constantly slamming the book down with pure frustration at the way that Rose handled things, mostly the way that she handled boys and just the way that she treated them sometimes, or just like a lack of common sense that was constantly present. But anyway, I will always remember the last book and the way that the series ended. It's been a while since I read the series, but from what I remember, Adrian was basically taken advantage of by Rose in exchange basically for her promise to try harder in the relationship. He gives her money to pursue her ex-boyfriend, who is a evil vampire, and then they get back together behind Adrian's back, and then at the end she kind of basically throws it back in Adrian's face. I just remember being like, I can't believe that you handled this situation this way. I don't even think I really appreciate the Dimitri and Rose dynamic, the whole relationship. Not into it because it just brought about misery for them and everyone else that she came in contact with, because she was just constantly making terrible decisions on account of the fact that she wanted her ex-boyfriend back, who was also an instructor and also too old for her, and it was just... So with that being said, I might really like the Bloodline series by Rochelle Mead, because that is supposed to follow, at least partially, Adrian and somebody else, a girl, and I've heard that that's actually better because people who loved Adrian, people who actually appreciated him as a character, were happy to see him happier and not being taken advantage of by Rose. I think a lot of people like this series because there's always a lot of action going on and there is a lot of romance. There's always that push and pull between Dimitri and Rose, and sure, I think that's probably what propelled me through the series, but at the same time, it's also what made me hate it. It's definitely a series that doesn't appeal to me as someone who hates love triangles and just misery brought on by bad relationships. So it definitely wasn't the series for me, even though I got the whole way through it. If you've read Bloodlines, then let me know what you think of it. Okay, we are getting into risky territory here, guys. I realize I was already in it because a lot of people do like Vampire Academy, but I'm really gonna start touching on some bad things right now, okay? I'm sorry. The next series on this list is Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Before you want to kill me, please let me explain. I think it's great for some people. It just didn't hit me at the right time, and it probably never will. So as some of you might know, I've said this multiple times, but I reread the Harry Potter series once a year, once every other year. So I'm obviously not opposed to reading middle grade. In fact, I think a lot of times you can find really hidden gems in middle grade. And I think it was in 2017 that I decided I wanted to finally start the Percy Jackson series. I'm always hearing people talk about this series, and I constantly hear it being compared to Harry Potter or just talked about in the same conversation as Harry Potter, so I decided that it was finally time for me to experience that. Now, I know you probably already want to kill me for the fact that this series is on this list, but I'm going to tell you something else. I watched the movie first. I watched the movie probably the same year it came out, which was a while ago. I was significantly younger. And trust me, I know that a lot of people who love the book series hate the movies. Like, not even just like dislike the movies, but they hate the movies. And sure, like, I probably would feel the same way if I was a big fan of the books, but not being a big fan of the books, I thought the movies were really fun, and then I decided to finally read the book series. Well, I read the first book. I think it took me actually longer than I anticipated. I figured it would be a quick read because it's not that big of a book, and it's also middle grade, but it took me a while. I think it took me a while because I wasn't really invested in any of the characters. Percy was just an okay character. I can't even tell you right now what kind of personality he had because I don't really remember. And I knew that Annabeth was supposed to be a big deal because I had seen the movie and I had been reading online about Percy Jackson and everything, and I knew that that was kind of like the big ship, you know, Percy and Annabeth. But when she actually showed up, it wasn't really kind of like a life-changing thing. Like, I didn't feel like the bonds of friendship growing or anything. It just kind of felt like all the dynamics were off a little bit. Timing was okay. I mean, when you look at the actual components of this book or this series, like, all the components are pretty well done. I mean, it should add up to be a really good series, and for a lot of people it is, but I think maybe I read it at the wrong time because I got through the first book, and even though I hadn't really loved it, I was like, well, I'm gonna try to read the second book and then maybe it'll start like kind of steamrolling and I'll just really get into it, because the reality is that I love Harry Potter, but if you just read the first like 2 books of Harry Potter, you're not gonna love it the way that, you know, I do or many other people do, because all of that character development and all of that kind of dark and gritty stuff happens from the 3rd book on. So I tried to read the 2nd book in the Percy Jackson series and I had to give up like halfway through. It was a very slow read, which didn't help the fact that I already kind of didn't like the first book. It's been a while since I read the series, but from what I remember, the character Grover gets like stuck in a cave. He gets like kidnapped almost, kind of, and so they have to like save him, and he's like in a wedding dress. I don't know. It was, you know, it was almost too middle grade for me, and that's what I mean about the fact that I think I read it too late, because I couldn't appreciate that kind of humor in the book. So I think if I had read it when I was younger, I would have been like ha 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 and like continued on and just, you know, appreciated that, but also appreciated the more like emotional, more mature moments that I probably will never get to because I just couldn't get past that book. Now, with that being said, I haven't actually heard a lot of people talk about the books individually, like how they feel about them, so it could be possible that the 2nd book is kind of like one of the least liked, and maybe if I continued I would have actually eventually grown to like the series a lot, considering how much I liked the concept of the movie and just, you know, the book series in general. If you have read the whole series and you like it or you don't like it, then let me know, and I would also be curious to know which book in this series is kind of your favorite, because maybe that would help me understand what point in the series I have to get to really be invested. Okay, the last book or book series on this list for today, if you would like to see another video like this, then comment below and let me know, but the last book for today is going to be Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. I'm actually afraid that you're going to murder me, so please don't. I'm really sorry. If you love this book series, you definitely should. It's a great concept, you know, but it's not my cup of tea. So this series follows a male perspective, actually, which was refreshing, definitely. It follows a boy named Jacob, who is 16 years old, and after a really shocking and disturbing event takes place, he ends up going to a small island with his father to investigate some family things. When he goes to this island, he discovers basically kind of an orphanage where he meets a bunch of very peculiar children. So they all have different abilities, just quirks sometimes, just strange characteristics, and he becomes friends with them. So once again, this was a book where I watched the movie first. However, after I watched the movie, I decided that I really liked the idea of the movie. I liked the plot generally. I just didn't really like how it was executed a lot. So I figured I would probably like the book series because it was probably just a bad movie adaptation, right? Well, I read the first book, and while I will say that I think the books are better than the movie, they are still not my thing. And I actually feel really bad about that because I know a lot of booktubers who not only like this series, but really admire it. I will be the first one to say that the settings in this book are among the most unique I've ever read in a series. However, the perspective and the relationships and just like all of the characters weren't enough for me to ever feel like I was fully invested in this book or the second book in the series, which I finished. Yes. I honestly can't tell you why I didn't feel an attachment to any of the characters, but I think it might have had to do with the fact that there were so many and none of them got really enough time in the sun to be as important to me as they probably should have. I realized that reading these books, I was more so admiring the imaginative creation of the world and just like the concept more than I was actually admiring the plot or like the characters. And characters especially are what draw me to a book. I'm usually not content with a book that is all kind of atmospheric and strange, even though I can appreciate it. There is a relationship, sort of, and maybe I'll put a spoiler here. The budding relationship between Jacob and Emma never actually felt real to me. I think Emma in general didn't actually feel real. She honestly felt kind of like a cardboard character that was, you know, love interest girl. I felt like she changed personalities like very often. She was very moody, and so she never came off as like a real person. She more so came off as like the love interest that is like a little bit hard to get but also in love with you, but like, I don't know. I was never fully into her, and I especially wasn't into the relationship she had with Jacob because it always felt very surface, very like unnecessarily teen-ish. We won't get into the fact that Emma is like her grandfather's age and was in love with his grandfather, because that's a whole can of worms that doesn't need to be opened, and who am I to judge, because, you know, I like books like Twilight and Akatar where there's hundreds of years of difference between two love interests, so I'm not gonna open that bag of worms, can of worms, whatever. But I thought I'd just throw that out there as another reason why I just was never fully connected. Once again, I am so sorry for saying this. I'm so sorry that I don't like this series. And the funny thing about this series is that I could see myself almost getting like a craving for the setting and just like the strange curiosity of the plot. Like, I could actually see myself reading the third one, but when I think too hard about the characters, then like I just like bleh, like I don't want to continue on. So with that being said, if you are one of the people who have read this series and love it as much as a lot of people do, and rightfully so, then tell me where I need to get to love the characters the way I should. Because honestly, it's not fair to either one of us. I don't love them the way they probably deserve to be loved, and they're not giving anything to me at this present moment. Anyway, that was my third book, guys. And that's the end of this video. I do have a couple more that I could probably make another video for, so let me know. I also wanted to thank you guys because I reached 100 subscribers. I actually got to, I think, 111 at this point. Thank you guys so much for subscribing. Thank you so much for commenting and kind of being my online book buddies. It's been really fun. It's been really great. If you're going back to school this week, then good luck. You're gonna be great. It's gonna be fine. Anyway, guys, I will see you on Thursday, and then after that, I will see you on the weekend because I'll post, I promise, and you know, we'll have a great time.